All right, well, I guess I'll go ahead and get started. My name's Jeff Finch, and I'm here with Shiva. She is an ornate hawk eagle. Ornate hawk eagles come from South America, and I think I just have a few minutes with you folks here today, so I'll do my best to try to explain to you why there's an ornate hawk eagle in western Pennsylvania, and tell you a little bit about an interesting sport called falconry. First of all, just to tell you a little bit about Shiva, like I said, they originate in South America, and she is not a typical bird found in the sport of falconry by any means. She was a unique opportunity that I had as a falconer here in Pennsylvania. I have a very close relationship and friendship with Comanche Indians in Oklahoma, and I've done some work with them in a breeding project, and they're thought to be the most successful eagle breeders in the world. Right now, they're working with the Spanish government to breed and improve the population of the Spanish imperial eagle. They've released over 300 bald eagles back in the United States since 1970, and breed actually eagles from all over the world. So through that relationship with that organization, you could look online at the word SIA, S-I-A, which is Comanche for feather. One of their missions is to create a repository here in the United States of raptor feathers and other species parts, if you will, as a legal acquisition point for Native Americans to practice ceremony. So this organization tries to create connections with organizations such as rehabilitators, falconers, and governmental agencies to acquire things so that Native Americans are less inclined to try to take a bird from the wild to honor their traditions. But anyway, in that relationship, they had this bird here, Shiva. She was in their breeding project, and for some reason was not successful at breeding up to this point. And they felt that it was a bit of a dishonor to her to not serve a more functional purpose, to have her in a breeding project yet not breed, left her sedentary. So they came to me because I'm a falconer here in Pennsylvania, and a bird that I've spent a lot of time hunting with is a bird native to Pennsylvania, which is an American goshawk. Goshawks are related to sharpshin and Cooper's hawks. They're accipiters, and the accipiters have long tails, as does Shiva, with short but broad wings, as does Shiva, and as such they have very quick wing strokes, but they move a lot of air, and they have long tails, so they maneuver very quickly. And so my Comanche friends thought that a goshawk falconer would be most likely to be able to condition her and train her to hunt, much like a goshawk does here. So as they said, to honor her, it was to put her into a situation closest to the wild again where she could hunt. She's not a releasable bird back to the wild, so she does get to come off the leash, so to speak. And here in western Pennsylvania, I have a farm in Spartansburg and home down near Zelienople, and she hunts rabbits and pheasants and occasionally ducks, and for the most part, anything she thinks she could hold down and eat, she'll go after it. So we have to be a little bit careful of the farmer's cat or whatnot when we go out, because Shiva tends not to discriminate. The only thing she doesn't seem to want to go towards is a dog, which is unfortunate, because in falconry we hunt with dogs a lot. We train our birds to be cooperative with dogs. My red-tailed hawks have always hunted with beagles, and my goshawks hunted with a Vizsla, and we have a good time. So anyway, that's a little bit about Shiva. So I'll tell you about the sport of falconry. Since this is a sportsman event, most people in the area are very well aware that the Pennsylvania Game Commission is the organization that you go to get your hunter safety exam and to buy your license and to get your regulations. And when you buy your license, you get the book, right? And you flip through the book, and there's a regulated sport in Pennsylvania of hunting, monitored by the Pennsylvania Game Commission, ultimately overseen by U.S. Fish and Wildlife, since our birds are migratory. And it's called falconry. And falconry is probably something you've heard. Maybe you have kind of a stereotype in your mind. You picture the hooded falcon, which, by the way, the hood is to blind the bird. It calms it, keeps it from wanting to go anywhere because it can't see. But maybe you picture medieval times, and maybe you even know that William Shakespeare was a falconer. But the fact of the matter is, falconry is thought to be the oldest recorded a hunting sport. So when I say hunting sport, non-subsistence. So 4,000 years of written record going back to early Chinese culture documentation. Still today, in Europe, it retains kind of a class structure. Falconry over time developed a symbol of being kind of an elitist sport. And so think about it for a second, why falconry may have been an elitist sport or a sport of kings a long time ago. How many people, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, had the opportunity to hunt just for the fun of it? They probably hunted for subsistence. They hunted with a functional purpose. Now, don't get me wrong, my goshawk kills quite a few rabbits every year, and my ornate hawk eagle kills her share too. But calorie output for calorie input in falconry does not equate surviving with falconry. So I remember a couple years ago, I took an environmentalist out. A lot of people have kind of a stereotype perspective of falconers. They think that we just take any bird from the wild and ruin its life and starve it to death until it desperately hunts for us. It's quite not the case. But took an environmentalist out and we went hunting, and after he spent the day and saw how hard we worked to put 2 or 3 rabbits in the bag with a whole group of guys carrying around sticks, beating the brush, he realized that we all look like a bunch of beagles and the smartest one in the field's the bird. And I said to him, calorie output to calorie input, we're all going to die. So it is a sport, and something that people that didn't need to worry about survival so much probably practiced a long time ago. I'll give you another example. Early American history, during the colonial times. You know, the colonists came over and colonies were developed by gentlemen. Gentlemen being a word that's thought to be an offshoot of falconry culture. Falco, excuse me, the peregrine falcon, Falco gentilis, or the term gentle is within the accipiter name of goshawk. In Britain, at the time, falconry was a sport of the gentleman. And so many of the British colonists that would have come over here that would have been in a leadership position very likely practiced falconry in Europe. They were gentlemen. And now they came here and they were setting up settlements, and there was a lot of question around falconry as to why don't we see early American history with falconry? Why do these British colonists, these gentlemen, not seem to practice falconry here when they came? So think about it for just a second. They may have had a pretty nice life as gentlemen in Europe, but when they came here to settle a colony, they ran into a lot of hardship. Tough winters, conflict with natives, establishing a home, and a lot of hard work. All of a sudden, trudging around with a stick and a hawk probably wasn't nearly as productively necessary as pulling out the firearm or hunting more effectively. So there's a gap in falconry, and there's not a lot of early American record in falconry, but some farm boys, if you will, for a long time, who took the time to read and read about the history of falconry, went out and got themselves a hawk and worked with them and practiced falconry here in the United States. And up until the early 70s, they were not thought of much and probably didn't talk to many people about it. But along came the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, and we went from a society here where people thought they should shoot every raptor that flew down the ridge to now they're going to be protected. And I'm glad for that. But at the time, as the government was protecting the birds, they were reasonably unaware of an ancient sport that some practiced here. And so only a handful of not more than dozens of self-taught falconers in the United States banded together, and they used the history and the culture from around the world to try to convince U.S. Fish and Wildlife that there was something here that should be protected along with the raptors. And your first regulations for falconry were introduced in the state of Pennsylvania, one of the first founded clubs in the country through the Pennsylvania Falconry and Hawk Trust. And by 1976, Pennsylvania had a full set of regulations written. They never show up in your hunting books. And now that there's a website, if you go to the PGC website and search falconry, you will find it. I'm proud to say that I got to participate in the only rewrite to those regulations since 1976. About 5 years ago, as the president of the Pennsylvania Falconry and Hawk Trust, I was given the honor to work with Jason Dukoski of the Game Commission, now head of law enforcement, then Special Permits Bureau Chief of Special Permits. And we modified the regulations to keep up with the standards of U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So in Pennsylvania, we have about 170 registered falconers in the state. My estimation is fewer than 100 of them actually have birds. Falconry is a great hunting sport, but when the season's over, you can't put your bird in the gun cabinet and forget about it till next year. So it's a sport that is actually a way of life. You take care of your bird every day. You don't starve them, but you do become an awesome personal trainer. I weigh my bird on a digital scale daily. I manage her weight to be at the peak of fitness. I want her to be hungry enough when we go out to hunt that she's focused on the mission, and that is to get her meal, but I don't want her to be so hungry that she's weak. So we manage her weight. In old days before digital scales, falconers would feel the breastbone right here, if you picture a plucked chicken or a turkey. And if the breastbone is very profound, actually feels sharp, that means there's a lack of muscle on the breast, and we call it a sharp bird or a malnourished or overly hungry bird in poor muscle. If that breast is so full and plump, like the one you want for turkey dinner coming up here soon, then we say she's fat. Maybe fat and happy, but if you can't find that breastbone, chances are when you release her on the hunt, she's going to sit in a tree, rouse, tuck her head under her wing, and go to sleep. And she's not coming back for a while. So we want them in a peak of fitness. And when I monitor her behavior and training to her weight and performance, then I know where that prime time is. I take her off the leash. Because she's a long-tailed, short-winged bird, she has flight speed. So she stays on the fist. I beat the brush with the stick. Matter of fact, if I took one of your sticks and went out and started hitting the brush, you'd see her feathers tighten up and her head would start to bob, and she's ready. Just like you guys with the dogs. Then when your dog sees you get the right clothes on and start getting the gear in the truck and the tail start going and they just know, same with the bird. And so when she starts watching, you kick up a rabbit, kick up a pheasant, maybe slip a duck, and she's going. They probably miss 8 out of 10 because they're at a disadvantage. In the wild, a bird's going to sit there and usually see the quarry before the quarry knows it's coming. In falconry, I just poked the rabbit in the butt and it's running before the bird saw it. Or I have a dog on it, and so typically that rabbit's already running from something before she gets her slip. So the disadvantage starts there. I don't know how many of you folks here maybe have some experience with farming in the region. Anybody up and baling some hay or raking hay around here? So I'm sure the guys that are out on tractors know that when you're raking hay, you'll often see a red-tailed hawk take a perch on the edge of your field. And that hawk will watch that tractor. Why do you think? Waiting for something to come out of the hay you're raking. Whether it be a rabbit or a mouse, a vole, you scurry things. And they learn that that tractor will produce, and they'll follow that, and they'll go and grab that mouse. You want to find a red tail? A likely spot to find it? Find a dead tree on a corner of a pasture. Why might a red-tailed hawk sit high over a pasture? Because horses and cows, when they graze and pull at the grass and they step on things, occasionally they scurry a mouse. And increase potential for sight of game. Hawk learns it, they watch, they take advantage. That's what falconry really does. We teach our birds that we create a bit of an advantage, that in this glove, when I whistle, there's going to be a tidbit of food, and when she comes to it, there's a reward. Food reward system, just like training a dog. Operant conditioning. I go from the comfort to eat out of my hand. We'll catch a red-tailed hawk in the wild, an immature bird on migration, right out of the air. Later that evening, we try to get it to eat a tidbit right out of the glove. And for that bird to bend down and pick up that tidbit in the presence of you, puts it in a vulnerable position. But once it does it and you don't hurt it, it wants another one, and then another one. And then a day or two later, you get it to eat more freely, and you get the bird to step from a perch to your glove, and then to jump from a perch to your glove, and then fly from a perch to your glove. And once you get that behavior, it doesn't matter if it's 10 feet away or 100 yards away. It knows the source. Put it on the perch, it doesn't jump, and it looks around. Note its weight, a little too high. Put on a perch, and it knows that's food there, and it looks, and that's where it wants to be first. Put it on your chart, weight's on. Take it out to hunt, and it chases a rabbit, and it takes the ground and pants, and it looks weak. Put it in your chart, a little too low. Figure out your bird, build a relationship, and you have a hunting partner. The beauty of catching a wild bird like a red-tailed hawk or a goshawk is that come spring, if you hunt that bird all season, and you sure like to think as an apprentice falconer that it loves you because you love it, fatten it up a little bit and put it out on a good clear morning with the sun shining and thermals coming off the ground. That red-tail that hunted with you all season, looking at you every step of the way, goes out fat and warm on a sunny day, and it never looks back. It just leaves. We tell our apprentices that if you think you love that bird, don't forget something. If it's hungry and it thinks it can hold you down and eat you, it will. Those of you that train dogs, you know that you could train your dog with social reward. Social reward goes a long way with the dog, right? Play with the toy, pat it on the head. You're playing to its psyche that it is a social or a pack animal. You don't get that with birds of prey. They're territorial. They don't even like their mate part of the year. They tolerate them. They may work with them. But they do not accept social reward. It's a food reward system. So apprenticeship, 4,000 years of recorded history with falconry, and it's been passed down, master to apprentice. If you read the regulations in Pennsylvania, one of the things we protected in our rewrites is to become a falconer, you need to find a falconer. The Game Commission will help you do that. But you need to find a falconer who's eligible to take an apprentice, and most of us, not that it's required, won't accept to sponsor an apprentice unless they spent the better part of a season with us. You really need to know what you're getting into. Again, you can't put it in a closet. It's a way of life. Can you house it? Can you take care of it? Can you train it? Can you hunt it? There's nothing we protect against more as falconers than people wanting to obtain a falconry permit to get a cool pet in their backyard and take it to a Renaissance fair or to have it as a showpiece on a glove. We actually wrote in our regulations that if somebody uses a falconry permit to do a talk like I'm doing, they can't even accept money for the gas to get there. We don't want to allow falconry permits to turn into an avenue for money. A falconry permit is a hunting permit. It's not a bird keeping permit. So to become an apprentice, you need to know what you're talking about. It's proven by the 150 question test you have to take and pass to then be eligible for facilities inspection, where a game warden has to come to your house, inspect your weathering area, your bath pan, the equipment that you hand make, your scale, where you're going to keep your food. And after all that, you have a sponsor who puts you through the ringer for a year. You pass a federal exam. You get your home inspected annually. And then you get your permit, and you're allowed to go out and try to trap an immature red-tailed hawk here in Pennsylvania somewhere between September, October, and November. And you have to catch it. And then go through 2 years of an apprenticeship to then be eligible for your permit, your sponsor to say you're eligible now for a general class permit. Now, I didn't tell you about my background. For the last 15 years, I've been a principal of a high school near Pittsburgh, and I'm an assistant superintendent now. But I always say when I do a program at our school that if you had to do half as much to make a baby, my job would be a whole lot easier. Because you don't even have to pass a test to make a baby. But don't touch the hawks, because you know people bring a little child into their house without any inspection of their facilities. You know what I'm saying? No passing of the test. So there's a lot of regulation behind making sure that these birds are taken care of. We're not allowed to take more than 2 birds from the wild in a year, and if every falconer in the United States, which adds up to barely 2,000, were to take their full allotment, which they don't, it's deemed by an environmental assessment that it would be an immeasurable impact. So falconry is not a sport that measurably interferes with populations of either birds of prey or the quarry that we catch. Quite honestly, we just can't catch enough game to make a dent. So it is a sport, though, that we're allowed to hunt small game from the 1st of September through the last day of March. Still no Sundays, though. We're hopefully all working on that, you know. But the other thing that's nice is no guns. You know, a gun doesn't go into the field with us when we hunt with a bird of prey. Guns stay at home. And, you know, I like to hunt in a lot of ways. My sons are sitting in the back, and we hunt in a lot of different ways. But we don't take guns out when we take the birds. And quite honestly, when we're in the field during a gun season, when we see fluorescent orange, we keep driving. Because you can imagine what my biggest fear is, putting a bird out around gun hunters that might not realize what's there and accidentally shoot one of our birds. So it's something we always watch for. So to wrap it up, I'd say that you know, even if you realize that falconry isn't a sport for you to practice, maybe it's a sport of interest. And you know, I'm proud to say that if you go to the Game Commission website, you'll see a section on the art of, and the history of the sport, things to know before you consider the sport, all the regulations of the sport. And you may have seen in the last couple weeks, there was an article in, what's it called, Terry? The Pennsylvania Outdoor News. There was a picture of Shiva there with me and a little story about my boys and doing some hunting. Also in a couple papers closer to Pittsburgh, I did some work with the Pennsylvania Game Commission to remove some troublesome birds in the city. But one of the things I like to do is, whenever the Game Commission needs help with a bird of prey, is hope that they'll call me, because one thing I learned in working with the Game Commission in that regulation rewrite is that these WCOs usually span as much as an entire county with very little help. They're spread thin, they get a lot of criticism, but they work awful hard to protect something I think everybody in this room loves. So although they might feel like a bit of a point of pressure at times when they show up behind you, it's good to remember how hard they work to take care of us, and I like to give back to them as much as I can. So that's my plug for the Game Commission. Can I answer any questions for you all?
Retiring the bird. What do you do for retiring the bird?
That's a good question. To retire a bird, there's different things that happen. When we catch what we call a passage bird, it's in passage or its first migration. We use a red tail as the most typical in PA. A red-tailed hawk doesn't have a red tail its first year. It's born with a brown speckled tail, and not until the following summer when it starts to molt to grow its red tail. So a bird more than a year old and on, it's hard to age it. But we can only catch an immature bird in that condition. And when we trap it on migration, it's already experienced a period of independence and ability to hunt in the wild, that we could train it to hunt with us, but we never man it so much so that it can't be released. So although it's not required to release the bird, most guys hunting red tails in that state hunt them for 1 or 2 seasons. We like to think, although we don't have the strongest data to support it, that we get it through its toughest year of life and train it to hunt effectively. And then we release it in the spring when food is plentiful naturally. In the spring, baby rabbits, more mice, things like that, that in the transition from support with us to the wild, it's more plentiful. It would be unethical, in our opinion, to release a bird in the middle of winter or when times are tough. That bird will go out and become very independent very quickly. It's a little different. A bird that's taken from an eyas or a nestling might imprint on a human and then associate it later as a mate. And it's something you have to exercise care if you release, because it might associate with people unsafely. So we do keep certain birds that cannot be retired, so to speak, through their life. It's the ethical thing to do. And what we do is we try to hunt our birds to the last day they can hunt. You know, just like they would in the wild, is that they hunt until something else takes care of them. And, you know, we like to hunt. I have a, I guess about a 12-year-old goshawk right now that's a rabbit machine. And she'll probably live to be about 20. And I'll hunt her every day that she's willing to get out and fly. Any other questions? Yeah.
How exactly do you trap a hawk?
Trapping a hawk, see, that's something we only describe to a certain point. But we trap on migration routes often, because one of the things we like to do when we trap is, one, we take immature birds, because we don't want to mess with a mated pair in an established territory that has a successful life. So a passage bird hasn't found a mate, it hasn't established a territory, and it's unknown how settled in it'll have the opportunity to become. So to catch an immature bird on passage, we do it on the ridges of Pennsylvania where they're naturally migrating. Watch hawkmountain.org's website. You'll see them start to count the red tails on the wing. We see the numbers going up. We get up into the hills, and we use a lure. It's typically a pigeon wearing a leather vest. And it's like a dancing pigeon. And, you know, we draw them in and net them. So you pigeon lovers out there, usually the vest is effective protection, usually. So, but the farmer whose silo we got the pigeon out of, he's never too upset about taking a few pigeons. But those guys that race pigeons, woo, they do not like hawks. So yeah, now as a master falconer, which I'm a master falconer, certain species and certain conditions, we are allowed to climb a tree and take an eyas. But ethically, we never empty a nest. We'll never take, if there's a nest that had one chick in it, you don't touch it. You never leave a nest empty. So just kind of a code of ethics more than anything. Any other questions?
What kind of housing do you have?
Housing? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot written in regulations about housing. We have what's called a weathering and a mews. A weathering is an area where it's protected. So it's enclosed, but barred windows, screened area, where hopefully they can be exposed to direct sunlight, even rain, wind, things like that. But an opportunity where they can get into a sheltered area or into a mews, which is a room that just has to be bigger than the width of their wing spread, and it's enclosed and totally protected. You have to have both, and the Game Commission does inspect it. This bird is part of what is a 26-foot flight pen on the back of my garage. It's carpeted, it's heated, because she's a South American bird. My native birds don't get heat because they don't need it. But when I say carpeted, that sounds like it would be disgusting. But it's like an indoor-outdoor porch rug with drainage underneath, and periodically just go in and pressure wash it. But you want to keep things mildew-free. They're susceptible to respiratory diseases of Asper. So you want to keep your facilities relatively clean. Always have fresh water in a bath pan. And you feed them a variety of foods. You don't want a mono diet. You want them to have a balanced. So we feed the rabbits that we catch, squirrels, birds, whatever we catch with them. And we get day-old frozen chicks from the hatcheries out east that keep the females for egg layers and throw the males in a bucket. So, yeah. She is actually an ornate hawk eagle. And she's from South America. So she's just unique. I would have liked to have brought my goshawk so y'all could have seen a native bird. But she's in a bit of a fuss right now. I'm starting to break her weight down to get her ready for the hunting season. And if I had her in front of all you, you'd all think falconry was nuts because she'd be trying to rip my face off the whole time I was talking to you. We need to get back into the relationship again as she comes off of her molt. If you see in the back at the table, Don O'Day's here, gentleman back here in a camo shirt. I had it was just a great privilege for me to bring her up and let him take some photographs and measurements with Shiva. And he did a carving of Shiva that's back there that I think took the better part of, I guess, the last 2 years. But I just want to explain that since the time, as she molts each year, some birds, their coloration starts to change. Red-tailed hawks will get more caramel in the chest as they age. Their face, their eyes will get darker. Some birds, like goshawks, their eyes turn red from yellow to red as they age. One of the things that it's funny, I didn't really think about it until I saw Dawn's carving from the photos 2 years ago. Then in just the 2 years, if you look at the photos, the coloration of her red is starting to darken. She went from a brighter red in her coloration to it's getting a little bit more brown. And the other thing that it makes me think of is the day we were there, it was in the hunting season near the tail end when I was getting her out daily and hunting and always in the field. And we were standing out near his driveway in a brushy area next to the driveway. And in her mind, we were on the verge of a hunt. And what's really cool about it is when you look at his carving, her neck and head look bigger. Her body looks bigger than it does now. And what it is really is in a comfortable state, they'll roust and they'll puff those feathers out. That neck will get real full and she might turn and rub her beak. And a comfortable bird's going to have that fuller look. And today, not that she's terribly uncomfortable, but everything's a little tighter. You know, the feathers keep laying down, her crown goes down. Anytime a dog walks by, she'll tighten up. You know, so a falconer learns to watch the bird's body, and you learn a lot about what's going on with them. If I have a red-tailed hawk in that tree out there and we're lining up about to put on our small game drive and, you know, kick up some rabbits, and I see that bird tilt forward and bob its head and its feathers get all tight and look with laser vision, we always say the bird doesn't lie. If that bird's looking straight across at that brush pile over there, that bird may have seen nothing more than a rabbit's ear tucked down when it heard you coming out of the truck. And if that thing postures itself and has got a bead on it, sure enough, you go walk into that brush pile, there's a reason it's looking there. And so your birds sometimes act like a pointer. Even on the gloves, sometimes I'll see her just snap down. I'll feel her feet grip my hand and her lean, like she's trying to lean and look around that pole, like she saw something over there, you know? And it's really, as far as hunting goes, I say you guys that are into both hunting, the game, and training your dogs and having a relationship, and you think training your dog is most of the fun. You train a bird of prey, and you put this eagle out there across that field, and it's sitting in there, and you don't kick up a rabbit, but you blow a whistle and hold your hand up, and you see that thing just comes cruising across the field, coming right to that glove. And you think she's going to knock you over, and at the last second, her wings pop open like an umbrella, and she barely makes your hand move. And it's pretty cool. I lost a little falcon of mine years ago, and I usually have transmitters on these birds, and I got a call that one of the cops, this friend of mine, said, "Jeff, your kestrel's down by this kitchen manufacturing place." So I went down, and the lady's working in the office. I said, "You're the ones that, did you see the cop here?" And they're like, "Yeah, we don't know what he was doing. He was running around with some glove and a little chicken," because he borrowed my stuff to try to go catch it for me. And I said, "Well, if you see it, will you call me?" And the lady goes, "Hey, wait, there it is." And it flew down, it landed on a wire right on Route 19 near Zillionople. And I was dressed in a suit from work, and I stepped outside the door, and I hollered, "Willie," and I whistled, and I put my hand up, and this little falcon just chattering away, comes cruising up 19, and landed on my hand, and just chattered. And I turned, and here both those ladies were standing right behind me, their eyes this big, and they're like, "How did you do that?" And I finally got to use my line. All this time, I wanted to use the line. I turned around and I said, "I am the Beastmaster." So you can have some good fun with people. Last year, we filmed a little bit for Tom Bob Outdoors. I don't know how their footage is coming together, but if you go to the Tom Bob Outdoors 2014 promo, they have a country video about the upcoming season. You'll see a couple shots of Shiva, where we had her kind of fly right into the camera and do some pretty cool stuff. So it's a lot of fun. Any other questions? Yeah. On the lake? No, I mean, our birds don't naturally catch fish. I will say Shiva last year, for some reason, flew halfway across a large pond. And I don't know what she thought she saw, but she did go down into the middle of the pond. It was in January. It was very cold. And then I look at her, and she's out there with her wings splayed out and just kind of floating there looking around like, what in the world did I get myself into? So I tried to call her out, but she's not a osprey or a bald eagle. She couldn't get herself up and out. And so she looked at me, and she rode like a boat. Feet would come out, and then she'd go down. The feet would come out, and she'd go down. And she just rode her way, and she got about 10 feet out, and that poor bird was so tired. She just kind of laid there in the water, and I stuck a large branch out, and she grabbed a hold of it, and I pulled her back in, and she shook herself off, and she hasn't gone near water since. So definitely don't want to go fishing with her. How old is she? She's about 11 years old. Yep, she's been with me for 3. Any other questions? Well, I thank you all. I hope you were interested, and you're welcome to take any pictures with her or anything that you'd like. I'd love to talk to anybody that wants to talk some more. So have a good day, everybody.